He desired for me to be intimate with another man, not just any man, but a black man, and not merely to be intimate, but to allow my husband to observe my name. Is Alan, and I am a 38-year-old married individual residing in the suburbs of Houston, Texas. I have shared nearly 15 years of my life with my husband, Greg. We've created a serene, steady, cozy existence, perhaps a bit overly secure. Greg, a software engineer, embodies a logical and composed demeanor. I have been a stay-at-home wife since our daughter left for college. I once taught at an elementary school, yet there was a feeling within me as the house fell into stillness. The silence enveloped me thick and oppressive, as if it were ushering in a shadow I had long tried to ignore. Desire. It began as mere playful banter. Greg would mention it during our late-night conversations, discussing wild fantasies, threesomes, roleplay, even exploring the idea of being a cuck. I would simply roll my eyes, plant a kiss on his neck, and dismiss it as if it were nothing significant. However, as time passed, the atmosphere shifted. The notion kept surfacing. He began to mention names and delve into specifics about various situations. He then mentioned Marcus. He mentioned their encounter at the gym, describing Marcus as truly remarkable. Self-assured and commanding, Greg remarked that observing Marcus with his wife transformed everything he observed, intimacy, and remarked that Marcus could achieve things he never could, suggesting that perhaps I was worthy of experiencing that as well. I inquired whether this was due to a lack of feeling on his part, and he responded with a no. He expressed that it was about liberating me, providing an unforgettable experience, releasing shame, and simply embracing the moment. It wasn't until that night at the restaurant that I found myself believing him. He mentioned that Marcus was upstairs in the hotel suite, that he had already spoken with him, and that Marcus was in agreement. With it, Greg settled the bill, and I exited that restaurant trembling. Yet it trailed behind him on the elevator. Absent, I found myself gazing at my reflection endlessly in the mirrored walls. Flawless lipstick, elegantly curled hair, eyes wide and filled with fear. My heart was pleading for me to flee, yet my legs seemed anchored to the ground. The hotel door swung open just as Greg raised his hand to knock, revealing Marcus clad only in black joggers, his torso bare. His chest was broad and adorned with tattoos, and he gazed directly into my eyes, a smile playing on his lips as if he already possessed me. Without uttering a single word, he simply moved aside to grant me entry. The air was thick with the scent of cologne and perspiration, illuminated by soft lighting and accompanied by champagne. Chilling on ice, Greg settled into the armchair in the corner, his excitement palpable, even insolence. Marcus approached, resting a hand on my hip, and leaned in to whisper softly, "If you want me to stop, just say the word, otherwise you belong to me tonight." I remained silent and let him continue. He kissed me with fervor, asserted his dominance, and tore the straps of my dress apart in mere seconds. I found myself utterly vulnerable. His hands were firm and unwavering as he lifted me as if I were feather, light, and gently placed me on the bed. When I witnessed him remove his joggers, the atmosphere changed, 12 in thick, heavy, and pulsating. My body became still as my thoughts surged, yet my spirit, it had vanished. Marcus's touch was reminiscent of no one ever understood me like he did. Every breath, every movement, every sound. He understood precisely how to dismantle my defenses softly, while my husband observed, gradually pleasuring himself, his gaze filled with wonder. I lost count of the number of times I reached that peak. I utterly lost track of time. Time faded, perspiration fell, my voice faltered, my body felt foreign. It became Marcus's canvas, and he adorned me with his rhythm when he finally fell beside me. My legs were trembling like jelly. My husband approached, pressed a gentle kiss to my forehead, and murmured, "Thank you." As I gazed at Marcus, he offered a smile, and in that instant, I realized I would forever be changed. I awoke with a sense of soreness that extended beyond the physical realm, touching my emotional, mental, and spiritual states as well. My body throbbed in areas I never realized could feel pain. My throat felt sore from the sounds I had made, and my thighs continued to tremble. My spirit seemed ensnared in a liminal space, caught between remorse and longing. Greg lay beside me, peacefully asleep, one arm resting gently over my waist. I turned to look at him. He appeared so serene and satisfied, a smile gracing his lips in slumber, as if he had just experienced the most wonderful dream. Yet my mind lingered on Marcus. His rich voice, the strength of his hands enveloping me, the weight of his body pressing against mine, and that exhilarating feeling of expansion. Something had profoundly shifted within me. He struck a chord I hadn't realized existed, and now I couldn't rid myself of it. I didn't want to as. Greg stirred awake. He pressed a gentle kiss on my shoulder and murmured, "You were incredible." I offered a faint smile. Yet truthfully, it wasn't insincere. I wasn't merely performing, I was utterly absorbed, entirely enveloped, and I craved that sensation once more that afternoon. Greg prepared breakfast for us in our hotel room, and we attempted to present ourselves as a typical couple enjoying a weekend getaway. Yet I found my thoughts. Wandering, I closed my eyes and envisioned Marcus's face hovering just above me. His breath brushed against my neck, and his voice lingered in my ears. It remained. With me later that week, Greg brought him up once more, stating that Marcus wished to see me. I attempted to maintain my composure as if I weren't longing for it, but truthfully, it had been on my mind every night since our first encounter on the following Saturday. We found ourselves at an elegant Airbnb that Greg had booked just in the outskirts of town, extremely secluded and inviting, adorned with pristine white linens and aromatic candles. Greg arrived with a bottle of wine and mentioned he would simply relax in the corner. Marcus arrived fashionably, late, walking in as if he were the king of the castle. The location seemed as if it had been lifted directly from a music video. He donned a fitted black t-shirt that accentuated his chest and gray sweatpants that revealed quite a bit. He gazed at me, flashed a smile, and asked, "Miss me?" I chose not to respond. Instead, I approached him and kissed him. This moment carried a distinct quality, more languid and profound. He savored the moment, slowly removing my clothes, planting kisses on every part of my skin, murmuring tender words that made me feel weak in the knees. He positioned me over the couch, opened my legs, and entered. Asif. My body had been anticipating his arrival. Greg sat in silence once more. Yet this time, something was in his gaze. Everything seemed altered. The thrill lingered, yet another feeling crept in. Perhaps envy, perhaps remorse, to be honest. It didn't matter to me. In that moment, my body felt like it belonged to someone else, no longer my husband's. Marcus murmured my name as if it were a sacred invocation. Initially, his movements were languid, tantalizing, drawing me closer to the brink, and then he surged into me, overwhelming me until I could no longer contain myself. I cried out, my moans escaping so loudly that I had to sink my teeth into the pillow to stifle myself. Yet Greg heard every sound, every desperate call, and he remained unwavering in his gaze. When it ended, I fell to the floor, my legs trembling, my lips tingling, while Marcus remained seated. He drew me near and began to caress my hair. Greg approached and pressed his lips to my forehead once more, this time allowing the moment to stretch a little longer. Here marked, "He evokes emotions in you that I never could, doesn't he?" I remained silent. He was already aware. Following that night, everything changed. Marcus began reaching out to me directly, simply to see how I was doing. He claimed he was merely greeting. Yet there was always an undeniable spark in his words. I started responding in the quiet hours of the night. While Greg was in slumber, I found myself going over our conversations in the bathroom, my heart pounding and my fingers becoming a bit restless. I found myself becoming captivated one afternoon. Marcus dispatched a message, requested a meeting. Without Greg and I stared at it for almost an hour before finally responding. Yes, we encountered one, another at a hotel on the fringes of Thessaly, void of cameras, devoid of inquiries, only unfiltered perilous longing. The instant I entered, Marcus seized me, pressed me against the wall, and kissed me as if he had been longing for me. That night lacked a gradual ascent, no flickering candles, no fine wine, only raw, fervent desire. He positioned me over the dresser, lifted my skirt, moved my panties aside, and entered. Me in one fluid motion. It was untamed and fierce. I called out to him and he responded with a low growl. Of my name. We both reached our peaks. I experienced it 3 times before he did, upon arriving home that evening. I found Greg in the living room engrossed. In a television show, he inquired whether I enjoyed shopping, and I merely nodded. In response, he smiled. Yet I found myself unable to meet his gaze. I stepped into the shower that night, the water blazing hot, attempting to wash away Marcus's scent from my skin, yet it lingered, embedded within me, far more profoundly than anyone else ever had, transcending the physical to touch. The emotional. Greg began to observe my distraction, a dinner and my emotional distance at night. I realized I was focusing on my own sensations much more than on him. Simply gazing, I was fixated on my phone, much like a young person eagerly anticipating a message from someone they admire. One evening he finally uttered the words, "You're falling for him, aren't you?" I stood still, attempted to reject the truth, yet I found myself unable to deceive. "I'm not sure." Murmured, he stood up and walked away. It was the first time he didn't kiss my forehead as my time with Marcus increased. I ceased sharing details with Greg. Initially, a sense of guilt washed over me. But before long, it transformed into a feeling of vitality. Marcus revealed a part of me I had never discovered before. He instilled in me a sense of strength, allure, and longing. He seized control in a manner that compelled me to fully yield. And I did own a particular evening. Marcus gazed, hegazed at me, as I lay there exposed in his bed, and uttered something I never anticipated. "I could take you." If I wanted to, I chuckled. Yet, truthfully, I was uncertain about the idea of being taken away. I reclined, shut my eyes, and allowed the soothing bathwater to soothe my aching body. Yet no lavish soap or tender caresses from my husband could cleanse the depths of what had already embedded itself within me. I was tied to Marcus Evan when Greg's hands were on me. It was Marcus I sensed as Greg pressed his lips gently against my cheek. My mind wandered to the memory of Marcus's coarse touch on my neck. Each tender touch only deepened my longing for that untamed spirit I desired. As the weeks passed, the secret I had been concealing from my husband evolved into an entirely new way of life. Initially, Greg pretended not as perhaps he was unwilling to, accept the truth or believed it was merely a temporary situation I would eventually move past. However, I did not. I became even more engaged. Marcus began reaching out to me during the late hours, and occasionally I would slip out while Greg was still asleep. At times I would fabricate excuses about attending yoga or brunch, yet deep down all I truly desired was him. Marcus always spoke to me with a sense of passion, treating me not as a fragile partner but as someone cherished and hidden away a secret he held dear. I was no longer the woman Greg had married. I'd transformed into someone entirely different. One evening Marcus arrived at our home. Greg had extended an invitation. I almost gasped when I spotted him at the entrance. Greg uncooked a bottle of wine, set the music playing, and invited Marcus to take a seat and feel at ease. My hands trembled as I poured the wine. I understood the situation. Greg hadn't lost his grip. He had unveiled his intentions. Following dinner, Greg relaxed on the couch and uttered a phrase that shifted the entire atmosphere. "I want to watch again, but this time, I want to see how far you'll go." His voice was steady and detached, reminiscent of a spectator, observing a match rather than a husband, on the brink of betrayal against his wife. He welcomed me into his home, and I cast a look at Marcus. He approached, gently relieved me of the glass, and placed it down with care and silence. He drew me toward the stairs. I glanced back at Greg, and he gave a nod. That night was the wildest one so far. Marcus was relentless. He tested my boundaries, used words that struck deeper than I expected, and yet I responded with soft moans, quiet whimpers, and every ounce of surrender within me. Greg sat in the chair across the room, sipping his wine, as if he were an audience member at a film. his expression utterly devoid of emotion. As soon as Marcus was done, I fell onto the bed, breathless and drenched in sweat. It was unfortunate when Greg approached and pressed his lips to my forehead once more. Yet this time, I noticed a flicker of resentment in his gaze. In the weeks that followed that night, everything transformed. Greg hardly laid a finger on me, or exchanged a word. We transitioned from fervent nights to subdued meals. I'd catch him gazing at me with a faraway expression, as if he were contemplating the woman. I once was one evening following yet another quiet meal. He finally spoke up. "Provided you with what you desired, but now I can't bear to look at you without thinking of him." I said nothing. He continued, "You no longer belong to me. And perhaps that's my doing. Perhaps is shattered." What we had upon the arrival of dawn, I found myself awakening. The chill of the empty bed greeted me as I noticed a letter resting on the nightstand. He vanished just like that, without a struggle, without pleading, without an opportunity to make amends. Marcus remained present. Yet the atmosphere had shifted now that Greg was no longer involved. The thrill began town. The mystery, the excitement, it had all vanished. I started to perceive the truth of the situation. Marcus had no desire for a relationship. He was never interested in staying. He thrived on power, the allure of the forbidden, and the thrill of the game. When the game concluded, so did his existence. He ceased all communication, no more texts or calls, and just like that, I found myself alone, without a husband, without a lover, only silence and memories surrounding me. Individuals frequently inquire whether at times I find myself wishing I hadn't declined, as it was the first moment in my life when I truly felt vibrant and full of life. Yet there are evenings when slumber eludes me, tormented by the sound of my husband's voice. Your presence brings him to mind, and I can't help but see him when I look at you. He believed that sharing me would strengthen our bond, but it only shattered everything. Here I stand, neither a wife nor a mistress, merely a woman who ventured too near the fire and watched everything turn to ash. Thank you for staying with me up to this point. This narrative is intended exclusively for adult viewers. Share your thoughts in the comments. Was Greg in the wrong for sharing me initially, or did I overstep my boundaries? This channel thrives on your insights, your comments, your shares, your encouragement. They're the heartbeat of this community until the next revelations. Stay authentic, stay unfiltered, and always remember the price of overstepping boundaries.